What does it mean? What does it mean? Communication. If appearance is contentious and if behavior is a doozy, then communication is absolutely combative, contentious. It's where the fight happens. It is the fight, contains the fight, the rules of the fight. Okay, let's look at this. All right, we're gonna hop on over and look at our communication flyer. But before we do that, I want to look at something else. And that is Google's definition of communication here. Looking at definition, we have one, noun, the imparting or exchanging of information or news. And number two, means of sending or receiving information such as phones, lines, or computers. So as I mentioned, the medium, or in a certain sense of the form, is the arena or the place in which the communication happens. And then what's communicated is the information. But then there's a question of what information, who's sending it, and why. We're going to take a look at our flyer now. There we have it, communication. C is for communication. And I have it defined here as a crucial skill and art, right? Because communication isn't just the words we utter, whether that's asking for something, demanding something, requesting something, delineating something, setting a boundary, removing a boundary, whatever it is we're communicating. It's more than just the ability to make sounds. It's more than the ability to just replicate what one has previously heard. Getting to number one here, it is form and style and verbal and nonverbal expression. I guess I'll kind of front load this here because most everyone's heard it before. But if you haven't, it's a well-known and documented fact that psychologically speaking, when it comes to human beings, we communicate mostly through nonverbal communications. And I'll get into this sooner, but we're going to go down this list real quick and then open it up from there. So number two, in language, it is the use of signs, symbols, tones, etc. That's right. Communication, again, it's not just the words used, it's not just the syntax and the order and the grammar. It's what the words mean as symbols, as signs, and then again, the tones of one's communication actually carry, you could say, probably the weight of one's words, because tone is everything. And then moving on to number three here, um, okay, as if to demonstrate, you can even speaking of poor syntax, that whoever made this flyer. But number three, clarity and expression of thought and feelings to others is in fact an invaluable and rare skill. By that I mean the ability to actually express oneself clearly, what one means, where one is coming from, the context of one's thought, the perspectives, the considerations, the details, and then to step that in a either logical or emotional or sensational sort of sequence. And by sensational, I just mean of the senses, in a way that people can sense and discern. That way people can actually understand of, because to be able to communicate, what I'm trying to say is to be able to communicate in a number of ways for a number of different people, because different things appeal to different people for different reasons. A lot of it is personality and their temperament, things like that, but it also is absolutely, people's culture, where they come from, their language itself, the ways, and words, and what matters most to them and how they evaluate it, right? So the ability to express all that clearly is actually rare. And then to be able to further communicate that to others is even more rare. And so also, you can see here, bonus note, listening is as important a skill as communication. And basically, I would say that listening is part and parcel and a prerequisite for communicating, especially in a way people can understand, because first you have to understand them So you can then speak to them, right? This is context, this is culture, this is language, this is meaning through the words that we use to communicate anything from our emotional state to whatever it is. But in this case, I wrote listening is as important as, and I would rather, instead of that, I would say listening is as important a skill as the ways in which one communicates. Meaning, so of course, listening, looking, paying attention matters, but what also matters is discerning and understanding. So from there, at the bottom, it's just kind of reiterating some of the points of through image consulting. You can improve your ability to speak with anyone, to read and write, to speak in public or on camera. A lot of people, they're shy for a number of reasons. I think to this day, supposedly public speaking is the number one fear or one of the biggest fear. And it's been written that, people would rather face jail time than potentially stand out in a crowd, and I know that might not seem right given America's loud commercial culture, but I'm not talking about that bright, distracting image. I'm talking about everything around that, I suppose. Not that there's this bright image or that someone can't stand out or be themselves or those other kind of things that are both bought and sold as cultural currencies, let's say, and ideals or however you want to term it. But it's more like an artist standing by their work, more like someone being able to speak for themselves and explain themselves and to clearly kind of articulate why it is they are doing what they're doing, why they're saying what they're saying, what it means, its import, its value. They can make it clear. They make clear the values. In the case of artists, they create values. People follow values of their culture, the language that's established. And then the mediation process occurs as we communicate, right? You have individuals, families, groups, families kind of against society and society's kind of against families. I know a lot of people don't really make these considerations, but it's true. And we'll kind of get into that because now that we've covered the flyer, we are going to cover some further considerations on communication. And it's not just Google's bland definition here, right? The imparting or exchanging of information or news, means of sending or receiving information, such as phone lines or computers. A search engine or an AI or a robot probably would say that. And it seems pretty mindless. And I mean, mindless is in brain dead. And I mean, brain dead is in lacking a human brain. And I would think that the programmers would be able to better program that, but it doesn't seem like it because this is a very bereft definition of communication. And what's actually most interesting here is that Wikipedia has a more interesting, immediate, or imminent definition. This one. All right. So Wikipedia says communication is commonly defined as the transmission of information. Its precise definition is disputed. I want to stop right there. Says who? Stop resisting. What are you hiding? What do you mean it's disputed? No, it's not. Isn't it clear what I mean, what they mean, what he means, what she means, what the authorities mean, what the government means, what anyone means at any given time? No, it's never clear to anyone because everyone's coming from limited perspective, limited linguistics, limited training and education, limited world experience. It doesn't matter where they come from. Everyone has limitations, right? So everyone's left dealing with those. Moving on, and there are disagreements about, there are disagreements? No, there's not. No, there's, stop disagreeing. Stop resisting. Okay, so there are disagreements about whether unintentionally or failed transmissions are included. You mean rejected? You mean, are people upset that what they want is rejected? Is that what we're saying? No, stop resisting. Okay, so unintentionally or failed transmissions are included, right? Because think of marketing and advertising. What's the excuse if your product or your service doesn't sell? If you brought your product or service to the market in whatever ways you could best configure and conceive and it doesn't sell, that tells you something about the audience, right? That they're maybe you had the right thing, but you marketed it wrong. Maybe the thing never should have existed in people's eyes. But this is the whole thing, is that we could argue about the fact that should it have existed or not. That's what we're really breaking things down to. It should, it shouldn't, do or don't, right? Ride or die. So there are disagreements about whether unintentional or failed transmissions, no, there's not, are included, and whether communications not only transmits meanings but also creates it. And I made it plural there when I read it, but not only transmits meaning but also creates it. The creation was done beforehand, the transmission comes after the fact. The fact that no one else can see the thought process is kind of secondary to the fact that for us, again, I've said it before, appearance is reality. We just see a picture, we make a judgment. I assume that rubber hose is a snake. Not because I'm intelligent, but because I did the snake dance because I freaked out when I saw it. But then it turned out it wasn't a snake. And then other times when I've done the snake dance and it was a rattlesnake, right? Because we have those here in Southern California. I was glad. I'll dance away from 100. Like maybe this almost speaks to me to the reality of judgment. I could say I want to dance away from 100 rubber hoses to avoid 100. That one snake, let's say. But I tend to think people also apply the same thing in judgment, which I guess this is where people start saying, well, when we say, what does this mean for humanity and culture? They'll say things like, better for 100 criminals to go free than one free man be accused when he's innocent, right? So these are how language carries ideals. And then again, you can see that through this very medium, people say it is or it isn't. No, it's not. It's right or it's wrong. The idea that there is a failed transmission, I guess we could think about it from the perspective of nature. When a bird sings its song, what's it doing? It's trying to attract things, similar to a flower and a bee. Something to the birds and the bees, huh? Um, but we're getting the real education here, which is to say that communication not only transmits meaning but also creates it. So you could say the transmission does create it because an author or an artist or a person or a politician might have an intentional saying. One, they might gaff the words and then completely change the meaning of what they said. Two, someone else might hear what they say, but not all words and interpretations or ability to understand and then also translate and communicate. Again, none of these things are equal in us. So when we all have different tools of sensing, seeing, understanding, we come from different places and contexts, it just becomes infinitely more complicated. And the fact that we have more communication than ever only speaks to the confusion and chaos of it. That in fact, more signal is more noise, is more static. It's harder to discern meaning from the static. So what did I say about it's actually very rare that anyone can clearly communicate what they mean? Think of in hundreds and millions of channels on TV and on social media, how many of them are anything of substance or have a person or identity or personality that will stand by them in a coherent manner and say, yes, this is sincere or authentic or meaningful in any sense beyond just market appeal. I'm getting into what we say, I guess, is artistic territory. And these, because these are the judgments, right? These are the what's of important, what's of value. And clearly survival is of value to people. That's why culture is replicated in the first place. But I'm digressing. If we go to our footnote here on this idea that communication, its precise definition is disputed. No, it's not. Right. Communication is the dispute, the fight, and its arena, i.e. in real time. And when things get real, when birds stop singing and start sizing up, like if you could think of a peacock spreading its feathers, it's quite the display. Yes, it's to attract a sexual mate, but it's scary to other animals who say, what is this, thousand-eyed monster that just popped up in front of me? They don't understand. So that's the power of, if we go back to behavior and appearance, right, that the symbols of power are still power, which is why language means so much, because it's representative of what we call anything from virtues to values. So Communication is the dispute, the fight, the arena in real time. Remember what we've been discussing previously regarding persuasion, the difference between marketing and sales. Marketing is more like saying, this is how it is. Sales is saying, if I pester you enough, you might give in out of agreement, weakness, whatever it is. But, it's kind of the blunt edge approach to life versus the finer knife point or pen point approach, because details are everything. And differences and distances and dividing lines are also everything. So, persuasion. Time for a new definition. I was going to change this so it didn't sound so harsh. But, ladies and gentlemen, is everyone ready for a new definition? The voice of the weak bargaining position. That's what persuasion actually is. Or the unknown bargaining position, right? Because the unknown is weakness. Because, again, I've said this before, people, it's easy for people, and the tendency is to shun what they don't understand, because far easier and safer to not take the risk than take the risk, right? So, persuasion, the voice of the weak bargaining position. I mentioned haggling. Haggling is the imaginary devaluing. Why? Because you can. Should anyone ever put up with haggling? Well, only if they're desperate for sales, right? That's the only reason you do it. If you otherwise know the value and there's a demand, and it's a, especially if it's a known or iconic brand or image, of course they set the price and let the market figure it out. And then the market's always figuring things out, as we've discussed before, opportunity and difficulty. Things change, you adapt, you adjust. That's what marketing discerns. Selling kind of follows up on the tail end, but marketing is the spearhead, the head of the snake. Hey, Coyote, this is a people city. It's not a coyote city. What a punk. Look at him making a mess. You're not supposed to do that. And they don't even listen to the rules. They don't even listen. That's right. You better stop that. However you want to think of it, the vanguard, the front of the army, and words are this. Words and symbols and signs and tones are the mobile metaphors of this army. So going on to say, I don't know. I'm just making the observation, i.e., the interpretation, the dispute, the fight, right? And this is what we call a vanishing act, right? No, it's just, this is just the objective truth, or no, I'm just trying to understand the truth, or we can come to the truth, right? This is what we're really doing, right? No, that's not what happens at all. And I'll further illustrate these points. So we went through Google's plebeian definition. We're going to get to the sharper definition, and then we'll get into everything else. The sharper pen definition. Communication. 1. The crucial skill of listening, speaking, reading, writing, and expression. Of what, though? Listening to what? Speaking to who or whom? Okay, so let's go back to number 1. The crucial skill and art of listening, sensing, intuiting, speaking, reading, writing, and expression. Of what, though? Listening to what? Speaking to who? I.e., this is all interpretation of the one doing the interpreting. But there's no dispute. Yes, there is. Okay, so let's go on with it. Communication's very existence and context, that of social animals regulating their survival, is for the purpose of creating, transmitting, and interpreting meaning through perspective, language, tones, signs, and symbols, or force, power, and violence. Right? And people might say, that seems dramatic, or that's hyperbole, or what are you talking about, right? Civics. So the criminal asks, what did I do wrong? What? I thought this was America. I thought this was America. And then the authority says, ignorance is no excuse for the law, or whatever the imposed reality is. So you go into any situation, and people might put on a nice facade or front, but then it's all a matter of time before whatever the real emotional tone of the situation comes to the fore. And that's where you start picking up things like people's body language, their energy, where everyone's eyes are looking, right? The whole tone and setting of the mood. You can pick up on any number of factors and any number of situations that'll start cueing you in on the subtle details on the emotional tones and the reality and what these people are going through or doing and what their real feelings are towards one another, what the leader thinks, what the follower is, or if there's a supposed leader, maybe there's a real leader somewhere and someone else only has it in title, right? You start picking up on these things. So what their imposed reality is, what the hidden reality is, but appearance is reality with us. So you ask, ultimately, because I said so, right? Ignorance is no excuse for the law. What did I do wrong? You didn't know. This is where not knowing rules and regulations and dress codes and all sorts of things get people in trouble. So communication isn't just the projection or assertion of information, it's actually sensing and observing and taking in information too. This is what I meant when I first said back to our flyer. Let's actually just do that real quick because we can. A crucial art and skill. It is a form and style in verbal and nonverbal expression. In language, it is the use of signs, symbols, tones. Listening is as important a skill as communication. This is what I was getting at. You could say that the communication, in fact, comes from whatever the other interpretations are. And that applies to peacock feathers as much to human feathers, whatever our plumage may be, let's say. So sensing, observing, taking in information too, it doesn't occur in a vacuum either, right? Again, these things are triangulated. No one exists, like, unless you're a feral person or living in a cave completely shut off from the world, you're not just emitting random noises. There's an interchange and a interfacing with environment and the people around you, right? And you can watch this behavior in all animals. Actually, anyone with ones with or without, what we call intelligence, just at least the way they bump into each other and how they act and react around such things. When animals encounter, what do? How do they size each other up? How do they see if they're a threat? All those sort of animal behaviors. So it doesn't occur in a vacuum, which begs questions of people's motives in communication. What are they really saying? Who are they communicating to? Why? And then also, do they know? A lot of people, it's a stab in the dark, and maybe they have an audience, maybe they don't. It's a question of, kind of where do these things all align? I mentioned, I think it was in the last video, behavior. I said, yes, sometimes personal and creative values line up and thus resonate with others. And this is where we get into very interesting concepts regarding our sharper pen definition of communication, because again, it's not just art, it's not just skills of verbally communicating, like in pragmatic matters like family. It's not pragmatic at all, right? Family survival. But I mean, like, this notion of work, family, in all this, we have to communicate and talk to one each other for very good reasons, which we're going to get to. So do they know who their audience is or why? And are they just another animal caught up in their own survival? Serious questions to ask, right? So crucial to communication is listening and seeing, sensing in all forms, really. This is why I mentioned intuiting earlier, right? It's also a form of sensing or seeing or interpreting. Helps determine who is seeing, who is being seen, what is there to really see, what needs to be seen that we are not seeing, right? Crucial business and marketing and problem solving question and strategy is always, what are we not seeing that we need to be seeing, right? If there's a snake in the road, and there's a bunch of rubber hoses around it, what's the question that, lets us know where that snake is, right? We're simplifying this in terms of animals. So, and the communication of valuable information and what that information might pertain, discerning or perishing, right? Survival and otherwise. So we just covered, it's not just about communicating, but also seeing who and what else is doing the initial or original communications, or the additional communications, or the coexisting or contraposition communications, the chaos, discerning the chaos, trying to listen for the melody through the noise, right? Because we're going to get to that with a discussion of music here, because I mentioned about art and form and style and these sorts of things. So, on one hand, if we say that, let me just finish the thought here, I guess, before we get carried away, before I get carried away. Let me finish the thought. What is there to be seen? What needs to be seen? The majority of communication is nonverbal. We covered this, not just signs, symbols, euphemisms, doublespeak. Rather, what pertains to the body, body language. A wink is a sign, an eye roll is a sign, a finger pointing to the moon or a puddle on the ground or a snake on the ground or did you see that or do you see this, right? Whatever it is, those are all signs and communications too. And I mentioned this, they don't exist within one another, but more like against one another or bumping into each other or in contraposition to one another. Like a person said, the culture says to a person, I own you. And then the person says, the culture, no, I thought you were mine, right? They kind of have this interchange with the people around them. It's a dispute. No, it's not. What are you talking about? Shh. What are you hiding? I didn't say anything. Yes, you did. Was it appropriate? Did you say the right thing? What right thing? What do you mean there's a right thing to say? There's only one right thing to say. There's only one right thing to say. How does that even work? 8 billion people, we're in trouble. Anyway, back here we are. Art in all its forms is complex code of complex communications predicated on laws of seeing and being seen. Marketing is code and communication too, figuring out matching what to whom, specific outcomes created intentionally for specific reasons, right? So that whole Wikipedia blurb, we could just throw it in the trash with whoever came up with it. Yeah, let's run with that. And just say, okay, does what you're saying carry weight? Does anyone listen? Does it matter? Does it resonate with people? Why would it resonate? Because human beings react to particular signs, symbols, communications for very specific reasons, right? It's not actually contrived. It's very important, which gets to number 5 here. Tone transcends all else in communication. Music exemplifies this, hence tones, notes, sounds, chords resonate with emotions, as well as the visual symbols if incorporated through the voice of a singer. Music is arguably the quickest form of communication. This gets back to the birds singing. What are they trying to do? They're trying to attract groupies, obviously. They got a nice van out there, you know. Um, anyway, I would include, oh, this gets interesting. I would include visual art since it's very direct and easily a passive intake of these things, signs, symbols, tones. However, visual cues and figures and symbols means very different things in different cultures, so image is actually less universal in this respect. Otherwise, the general human tendency is to take whatever the note is and then to apply it to one's universal meaning. Meaning, if one is a Christian, one sees the world in terms of Christianity. If one's a nihilist, one sees the world in terms of meaninglessness. If one is a this, they see the world in terms of that, right? I could also say my political science teacher thought I'd be a great politician or speechwriter. My Catholic relatives thought I might have been a good pastor. Right on down the line, the list of the things the world wants to tell you to be. It's a dispute. No, it's not. What are you talking about? What are you hiding? Nothing, right? So, moving on, we were talking about tone and language. In this case, the interpretive process gets in the way of what the individual is seeing, right? This is me talking about the visual art is actually less universal because the mind in question, depending on how much it can see and in how many different languages it can speak, and so many different things you could say, the developed taste of the individual, the inherent and or developed over time, right? That mediation of nature, nurture, culture, garden, city, raw nature, wild nature, chaos, static, meaning therein, right? That these things get lost in the wash and the noise around us, our own subjective feelings, notions of objectivity that are imposed from the outside, and the way this is all mediated in the inside. So, and by inside, I mean the brain, right? Doesn't get in the way the interpretive process is, whereas when one doesn't argue over the sound, though it's somehow acceptable around music and nowhere else. And by that I mean I could say music, similar to certain events, allows for certain amounts of catharsis or expression. So people are allowed to be emotional or loud, let's say sometimes around music, depending on the venue and where and why. But people will say things like, this song means so much to me, and this song makes me sad or happy or nostalgic. Or for couples, this is our song, this was our song, that was our song. Oh, I hate the new connotation of this song because this new band or this person or someone gave it a bad rap. Or people will say Nickelback was never cool. Whatever it is, we have these signs, symbols of communications and memes, I guess, right? Memes is a market term. Memes is a simplified market term, so you can make money and understand what I'm saying here regarding tones and emotions and sounds and songs. All layers of experience and meaning and feeling, they can resonate there, and they find a place because the music itself conjures it in the hearer, in the listener, just like my words here, or someone or something else, let's say. The way I heard something and it brought something to mind. It made me see a picture. Or like Aristotle said, the soul does not think without a picture. So again, the idea of arguing over sound, right? No one argues over sound except where they do, and maybe even the band breaks up over something as serious as sound or tone or what direction you want to go in, what creative direction. Like, these things are huge for people, whether it's a band or a family. People break up over general tone. If the tone isn't right, if the vibe isn't right, if the day to day isn't right, if the functioning and processing isn't right, if the system isn't right, people fall out, fall apart. It's entropy. So these are the importance of clear communications. So I said, note, when it comes to people, no different than appearance and behavior, communication makes and breaks human relationships. So there's all of that in a nutshell. So these were other blurbs Google had, which we're just going to look at for consideration. What is the strong definition of communication? Someone asked this. Communication skills are the abilities that allow you to effectively share your thoughts and emotions and understand others. Right? This is where I said communication is listening and speaking. Right? It's seeing and creating. People with excellent communication skills express themselves clearly and effectively, interpret what others say. What? See, oh, okay. See, I wanted to read that with a comma. I'm interpreting this too much. People with excellent communication skills express themselves clearly, comma, or dash, and effectively interpret what others say. Otherwise, the and the effectively interpret could be seen as a modifier of the word clearly, right? And that's what I was doing. I was following the immediate. Anyway, so in the workplace, effective communication is vital. It's not just the workplace, everywhere in the world. Marketing is the art and business of effective communication. Selling is the art of persuasive communication. I could go on and on as to why these are matters of vital importance. And I say here, this is what I wrote as like my commentary. I agree. At work, at home, in life, period, communication is vital. Vital meaning necessary, vital as in meaning necessary to life. So we need it for life. And then I also think, as well as I butchered that syntax there, that meaning is also vital to life. That's why art means so much to us. In our culture in America, it's acting, and in modern times, it's social media. Like, people love this stuff, they hate this stuff, they can't get enough of this stuff, they criticize it, they love it, they hate it, they want to compete, they want to tear it down, they want to fight, they want to hack, right? They want to hack the algorithm. In reality, it's audiences, it's people, it's communication, behavior, the appearance thereof. Why? Because what we create also doesn't exist in a vacuum. In fact, the most important thing humanity creates, which is other human beings, don't exist in a vacuum either, right? We exist in contraposition, or next to, or side by side, or under the same roof as one another, right? That's us as human beings. And our creations, whether art or children, speak back to us. Or in the case of, like, Freud says, or Freud writes in Civilization and Its Discontents, that writing, let's say, excuse me, writing, for instance, is the voice of one absent. And there's a question of what are they saying, and is it still relevant? And are they, they're not here to update what they've said or to mediate the process and dialogue between two people. But even if we kick back at the matter to idealists like Socrates and Plato, even then they made the process sound more dialogic when in fact it was a monologue all along. Hence we go back to the birth of tragedy in Greek culture and the collections of the Greek tragedies, where you can see this very thing expressed, that it was always about the pathos of the hero and the character, which eventually got lost in the chorus, which was a repetition that could be modeled for further catharsis of a larger population. No different to, let's say, orgies or riots or protests. But, now we're getting lost in the finer points of civics. So let's bring it back to art and children. Like, the point is that these things speak back to us. And then what are they communicating? Because the children in turn are creating a record of what they've seen and what they've interpreted. And then there's questions of, does anyone listen? But no one sticks around forever to call you wrong or to say you're wrong anyway, right? So what do the older generations have to say to the younger generations? It's a serious question. So moving on, they speak back to us. So if someone were to ask me as an image consultant, as a professional, as a friend, a lover, a husband, a father, a brother, if someone were to ask me in any fashion, why then does communication matter? It matters because it doesn't just create and secure our present as individuals and collectives, but it also secures our future. Literally, metaphorically, artistically, it's forever that horizon and that mountain that we are climbing. Whatever our highest metaphors may be, my own personal thoughts are American, especially in business, even though there is something to marketing and shunning non-believers, they've also gotten way too exclusive in terms of everyone's money is green. And if you're intelligent, you figure out how to leave room for people to find you or figure out what it is you're saying. Or, in terms of, I guess, back to legality in these matters, you could think of the court system. And it very much is like the way the justice system idealizes these things, you could say, is something like, people are supposed to be allowed to do their time and then be free. So the idea of exclusion on a permanent basis is just plain wrong, because there's always new contenders for new games. There's always new games and there's always new contenders for old and new games. So these are the sorts of things that we're constantly creating, destroying, mediating, protecting, attacking. No, we're not. It's settled. No, I thought it was a dispute. No, what are you hiding? Stop resisting. No, let me see. No, if you would have just been honest with me, right? And like Hunter S. Thompson says, the only crime in a closed society is honesty, right? Is stupidity ultimately. If everyone else is hiding their cards and cheating in their own ways, in the ways that they do, that they're not going to say, because of course they know they're judged for it. If everyone's shortcutting and hacking or trying to get what's a little bit out of reach, of course they're going to look for every little advantage, right? This is why I said image consulting, communication, it's everything. Oh yeah. The only reason to discriminate is someone's just a bad client, right? Some clients are great. Most clients are good, and then some are just bad, right? You could say there's no such thing as a bad student, only a bad teacher, and I tend to agree. But this is where I'll defer to people's parents, their society, their culture, right? What are these messages that we are sending each other? So it's easy to take for granted because the world is drowned in endless signal, static chaos. But the reality, genuine and authentic communication takes bravery. Genuine and authentic communication takes bravery, right? To be authentic and to kind of meet where authenticity and professionalism comes together makes for unique marketing. And this is why people don't like the concept of fake, though. Not as in, people like art, they like literature, they like suspension of disbelief, they like theater, they even like a little bit of drama and exaggeration, but no one likes something that is just doesn't belong, something that's out of tone, something that's, I guess, in modern terms, the word that's been applied is cringe. That's what we're talking about here, is that which is cringe. No one likes cringe. No one likes fake. No one likes that which can't see why it's fake or how it's fake. Because a mask is attempted protection. Yes, like I mentioned earlier, the idea of saying, "Oh, this is just my opinion," as if like it just bonked me on the head or it fell out of the sky, versus, no, you're asserting something on me, and if I don't agree with you, I don't agree with you. Oh, ignorance is no excuse for you either, or anyone else. And you see that due to how much time everything takes, that no one has time to, if people aren't clear and honest and straightforward, at least in where it matters in terms of market, business, life, no one has time to bother. Even in art, even high art has a cutoff of what people will accept in terms of doing the hard work that makes them think, or reevaluate the world, themselves, and their values. But I mentioned this also in the other videos, that that's absolutely what good writing and art does. It does make people question. It'll stop people dead in their tracks. It'll be a gut punch. It'll make them think. It'll make them analyze, whether they're a logician or more of a feeler or one of those kind of sensors or hands-on type. You know, people have different ways of kind of sensing and approaching the world, but there's a way to make everyone think in their own manner. You know, what resonates most with them, obviously, right? For a bee, it's a flower. For a bird, it's a song. For a human being, it's a Cadillac. And then we have a little bit more here, and I'll wrap this up. Well, no, that's it. I actually wanted to end. I wanted to end on the idea of that what we create forever speaks back, and it speaks back. The very act of speaking back and all these things is the arena, is part of the arena. And there will always be new contenders. There will always be new children. There will always be old contenders. There will always be older children. So in terms of whatever it is you might need to navigate all these complex communications or improve your communication or learn how to speak to anyone or improve your reading and writing or learn to speak on public or on camera or whatever it is, right? Whatever these things might be, that Zach Morkowski here at Sharper Pen Image Consulting can definitely help you with these things. You know, so far I've been working with very personalized programs for people, you know, because people are so individualistic and so different. This has been my approach with increasingly, you know, by practice and time and research, increasingly systematized approaches and methods, but a plethora of options in your arsenal. Because again, to appear, behave, and communicate well in the world for whatever your success and your objectives may be, whether that's friends, family, love, hate, whatever it might be, art, business, that our image consulting here can absolutely help you. Ultimately, no matter what your desired aims and outcomes and goals are for your communications in this world, that Sharper Pen Image Consulting can help you further assess, refine, change, alter, improve, update, whatever it might be. Again, thank you for your time. If you're my audience, I love you, and shun the non-believers. Have a great night. Take care. Bye. And there's the thing about people and value. You know, I said, yes, marketing, sales, all these things, image consulting, art, it's all about laws and dividing lines, right? Behaviors, appearances, communications, people do and don't want.
Hey, Coyote, this is a people city. It's not a coyote city.
Things that are either okay, enjoyable, preferable, illegal, right? We go on down the list.
Look at them making a mess. You're not supposed to do that, and they don't even listen to the rules.
So with these dividing lines, it really is matters of, it is okay to say shun the non-believers. Hey, you like Pepsi, you like Coke. No one's concerned, no marketer or consumer is concerned necessarily with what everyone else is doing, except when that's the bandwagon or the selling perspective or the hook, you could say, right? Be a part of some attractive group, which has long been a part of American marketing and sales. But it's also, you know, that has to do with our identity and the way we see ourselves. And this is why I say self-image is everything, just like image is everything.
Shun the non-believer! Shun!